Hey everyone, nice to see you. Happy Monday. We are live again today for the Rockstar Coach Brand Club. I'm Melissa Henry and I'm your host. And I'm really excited today because I get to interview Radiance Harris. She's an award-winning trademark attorney. She's a best-selling author and speaker. And as the founder and managing attorney of Radiance IP Law, she helps emerging businesses protect, monetize, and grow profitable brands with trademarks. She's successfully represented startups and multinational corporations across diverse industries. Previously, she worked at one of the world's largest law firms representing Fortune 200 brands. And during her extensive career, Radiance has been widely recognized as a thought leader in the intellectual property law field. Her accolades include Maryland Rising Stars for Intellectual Property by Super Lawyers, Washington, D.C. Rising Stars for Intellectual Property by Super Lawyers, and Nation's Best Advocates 40 Lawyers Under 40, just to name a few. She's also been featured as a legal expert in a variety of publications, including Forbes and the New York Times. So without further ado, let's welcome Radiance Harris to the Rockstar Coach Brand Club. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm excited to be here and talk
Yes, yes.
trademarks.
Yay. And I want to let all you guys know anyone who is watching on social media right now, we've got people in the house with us. We've got Laura, we've got Chanda, Lillian, another Laura. There's two Lauras? No, I think one of them is a double Laura right there. We've got Sajad, we got Suzanne, we got Carolyn. Thank you guys for coming. Listen, if you're not in here with us, you should be, because not only do you get to get your actual trademark questions answered today, but you also get a special bonus from Radiance that's only available to the people who are here in the room with us. So if you haven't already registered, go ahead and do so. We're going to be popping that registration link in the chat, in the chats on Facebook and LinkedIn right now. So let's get rolling. All right. So, Radiance. So, for those of us, and not me, but because I know who you are, but for anybody who is meeting you now for the first time, can you give us the backstory on how you ended up specializing in trademark law for small business owners?
Sure. So the long story short is I started my career at DLA Piper, which is a large law firm. I was in their trademark, copyright, and media group. So I started my career 14 years ago, representing the big Fortune 200 companies, doing trademarks. And it's something that I really loved doing. However, I did notice that a big part of my role was trademark enforcement. So I was often sending cease and desist letters and initiating trademark oppositions and lawsuits against, unfortunately, small businesses. So I realized that there was a lack of education, if you will, for small business owners. They didn't know what a trademark was, didn't understand its importance and value to their business, why they needed to protect it, and then most importantly, why they need to be more respectful of others' trademark rights. So fast forward a few years, I decided to start my own law practice, Radiance IP Law, where I specialize in trademark exclusively for small businesses because I really wanted to help the emerging businesses with big aspirations protect their trademarks early.
Yeah, that's so awesome because I think a lot of people, a lot of times the trademark attorneys want to go for the big, the big companies because that's like obviously the where they're going to get the most money or whatever from it. But I love that when people actually do focus on the small business owner, I just think there's a much bigger need there. So I did read that your vision is to help 1 million women-owned businesses protect their trademarks. Why is that a strong belief of yours?
Well, I mean, it's personal to me. I'm a woman-owned business. And then on top of that, there is the, unequal pay gap that a lot of women experience in the workforce, and they often go into entrepreneurship to be able to leverage those opportunities. And so one way to really increase your revenue is by getting trademark protection. There's statistics that show that businesses who secure trademarks make 3 times to 5 times more revenue than those who don't. If you look at like large companies, 70% of their value for the public traded companies is in their intellectual property. So it's something that's very important to not only increasing the value of the business that you're growing, but also increasing revenue. And I think that's really important, especially for women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I think what's also interesting is that women entrepreneurs, like, they'll leave the corporate world to start their own business with the idea of making more money, and then they don't.
Oh,
And then
exactly.
they make less.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So do you see, and this is not really it's something I'm just coming up with this now because I'm thinking about it. It's like, does it make sense, or hmm, is trademarking something that's specific to your business the way to make more money?
I think it is. What I've just personally discovered is that, and I love working with these kind of clients who kind of like they're at the beginning, but they have such a huge vision for their business. They're just like, this is gonna be good. Like, and that's the thing, sight unseen, right? If you're starting a business, you don't know how it's gonna go. But like that belief that this is gonna be big, I'm gonna make serious money. Let me make sure my ducks are in a row before I even make it to that point that I envisioned for myself. And so that's what I really enjoy. And that's what I've seen, that those who actually go into entrepreneurship with that, like, I'm going to make it mindset versus, oh, this is just a little side hustle or side hobby, they really do end up doing really well. And then having the trademark is just the icing on the cake because now they have that distinctive brand that is legally protected to stand out. And then it also lessens like a likelihood of them having some legal challenges later regarding their intellectual property and or having to rebrand, which is also a significant cost and stress.
Oh yeah. I mean, you and I talked offline about my stress about that. So
Right.
the stress is real. So I like that. So you literally wrote the book called Trademark Like a Boss.
I did.
So what made you decide to write it? Like, who is it for, and why did you say this is something that the world needs?
Right. I actually wrote it during the pandemic that we all experienced. And I just remember being up in the middle of the night. Like I know a lot of entrepreneurs, you get your brightest ideas like in the middle of the night when you're trying to sleep. And so that's when it came to me. And it was just like, okay, Radiance, you need to write a book. You're gonna call it Radiance, or you're gonna call it Trademark Like a Boss. And literally, I ended up hiring a book coach, and then I went away for a 3-day weekend and wrote the entire book in 72 hours.
Mm.
And my focus was that, okay, there are a lot of businesses that, can't necessarily afford my services or even working with another attorney, but trademarks are so important that I think that there needs to be a guide for those who understand the importance of value but might not have the cash flow right now to do it. And so
Mhm.
that's why I wrote Trademark Like a Boss. And it's amazing to see thousands and thousands of people have bought my book and they share it with other people. They've used it to actually, do successfully, pursue the trademark process. They've used it as a guide to then, come and work with me. So like people will read it and they'll be like feeling empowered to go and do it. And others read it and be like, oh no, I'm not doing all that. Let me go hire Radiance. So it's been a great resource for myself and then for those who have had the pleasure of reading it.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And there is one thing that I noticed about your book, and that is that it's almost like your assumption is that when you wrote it, is that you will get the trademark if you follow my directions. There's not, I don't recall seeing anything in there that says, oh, this didn't work, so here's what you do. Am I wrong in saying that? Because I feel like I,
Well, I will say that I basically took a lot, like, so, I'm a trademark expert. I have all this knowledge in my brain, and I try to concise it into this helpful guide that a 5-year-old could understand. And so I wrote it in that way. So if you don't have any understanding about trademarks or even legal topics, you can read this very easily, very quickly, and understand it. And so I will say I guess I wrote it from a confidence standpoint in the fact that like I know what I'm talking about, but and a lot of people who've read it like are like, oh, this was such an easy read. So I guess you can say yeah. And on one hand, I did write it in such a way, but then I also did make disclaimers. There's disclaimers in there. There's
yes.
also, okay, if you run into an office action, like a substantive office action, like likelihood of confusion or descriptiveness or something really substantial, get an attorney, like get an experienced trademark expert. This is like way too complex. So there are some disclaimers throughout it, just making people aware that it's not guaranteed to be successful, but this is a
Right.
really helpful guide to help you through that
Yeah.
long, tedious process. Yeah.
Oh, so good. All right. I'm glad that you said that because my next question was going to be, how would you explain trademarking to a 5-year-old in a fun and engaging way so that they would actually listen to you?
It's interesting you say that because I have a 5-year-old, and I remember we were walking in the mall and we're like looking for Chick-fil-A, and we're walking, and he sees the logo for Chick-fil-A. Not even the word, just the logo. He's
Uh-huh.
like, Chick-fil-A's right there. And so that is a good understanding. What trademarks basically are a way to distinguish your products and services from your competitors. So when people automatically see that name, that symbol, those numbers or letters, it's automatically associated to you and your business as the source and not your competitors. And so that is kind of the easiest way that I can describe what a trademark is. It protects your brand, so elements of your brand. So it could be your business name, it could be your doing business as name, it could be taglines, it could be a logo that you're using, podcast name, event that you do, annual event that you do. So anything that is distinctive and unique to you that separates you from your competitors.
That's great. Do you have any statistics like what's the return on investment of getting a trademark? I think a lot of people, just as small business owners, we have so many things to invest in that, and we're trying to be profitable. And so we have to take this balance of, okay, when is the right time to get the attorney involved and get my trademark? Like, is it the right time to be spending that kind of money, or should I be doing something else? So what, how can you frame that for people?
I think it's important to think about, so when you're starting a business, and so right, all the investment that you're making and getting it off the ground and all of that. So it doesn't make sense to build a house on land that you don't own. And essentially that's what you're doing, right? When you're spending all this money. So you spend all this money on a fancy house and you've got it all laid out and designed and it's your dream home, but the land, the foundation you don't own. So the actual owner of the land can come and say, oh, you got to move. You're like, well, wait a minute. I just spent all this money building this amazing house. And so that's what a trademark does. It's that legal foundation that establishes the legal ownership. So that as you're building that house, you know that I got this land. I'm owning this land. Nobody can come and say, oh, you don't own this, or you need to move your house somewhere else. And so that's why it's so important to get the trademark early in your business, not later. Because I would say all the clients I work with say, I wish I had done this sooner. I've never worked with a client who says, I regret trademarking my business.
Mhm.
Ever.
Mhm.
So it's one of those where if you're, and I would assume your business is what is your livelihood. It feeds your family, pays your bills, all these things. And so you want to make sure that that is protected. And so that's what a trademark does.
Well, what's interesting to me too, though, is that, oftentimes when people are starting their business, they're not really sure what that name is going to be, the business name, right? So, I mean, it's chicken and the egg, isn't it? It's like, don't we need the time to figure that out? Like, what's the moment? That's that moment when we go, okay, now I got to call Radiance.
Right. So when you're clear about two things, so like when you're in terms of your business name, so a name that you actually love and it's distinctive and unique and it just kind of gives you that inspiration. And then two, you got to be clear about your products and services. So what is it that you are offering under that business? If you're clear about those two things, you're ready to start the trademark process. You don't even have had to have started using the business, or the business doesn't even have to be opened yet, because you can start the trademark process based on an intent to use or start a business within the next 2 to 3 years. And so I would say once you're very clear about those things, like if you have a name that you know and you love, and you'd be pissed off if you found out that, oh man, a competitor's using it, or they went and trademarked it before me, that is enough to be like, okay, let me go and make this investment now and protect it and make sure that I'm good. Now, if it's just a willy-nilly name you come up with, you don't care, you don't love it, you're just like a placeholder, maybe you don't make the investment in that. But I would say for the trademark, if it's a business name that you know and you love it and it inspires you, that is when you know, let me trademark this.
Yeah. I think too, though, like from my perspective, so going through this process for myself, what I was doing was I was on the USPTO and I was doing my trademark search. And what I was finding was there were other names that were similar, but I wouldn't have known that they would have this issue with my name. So, would you say then for people listening, okay, I have this name, it's in your book. I get that. So like you have that information in your book. So you can tell people just go look at my book and then I'll tell you how to do this initial step, right? So is that a point at which you can help them even possibly figure out a better name if that one's if you look and you see that that's not going to be the way you need to go. I think that's the helpful part, I think, for a lot of people because they're going to not really know how to do the search.
Right.
Maybe we could tell them a little bit about that. Maybe that's the way we head in this direction. But what's your sort of advice around that?
I mean, I will say, so a lot of clients come to and have an initial trademark strategy session with me. And so a lot of times that's during the time they have all these different things or different possible names. We do a strategy session. We talk through, okay, that's distinctive or no, that's too descriptive. We do like we call knockout search where you look at the USPTO records. I think the benefit to getting an attorney to do a knockout search versus you doing it is that what a lot of people don't realize when you go on the USPTO website and you just do like the manual search and put in a name, people think, oh, nothing came up, I'm good. That's not always the case because in trademark, the standard for trademark infringement is a likelihood of confusion. So you can have two names that are coexisting in the marketplace for related services. They don't have to be identical for there to be a claim of trademark infringement. If the names are similar enough and the products and services that are offered under the two respective marks are similar enough, there could be a trademark infringement issue. And I don't think, as much as I can write a book and kind of try to describe what that is, only an attorney would know how to identify if there's a potential trademark infringement risk here or not.
Okay. There's a question in the chat about where you're licensed. Maryland, correct? Or are you able to work
I'm
anywhere?
licensed in Maryland and DC, but I work with clients worldwide. As long as they need protection in the United States, I can work with any clients in the United States and internationally who are seeking trademark protection in the United States because intellectual
Mm.
property is a federal law practice. So I don't have to be barred in wherever you live to be able to help you.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, and then if you had a trademark treasure hunt for coaches and consultants, what would be the crucial elements that you would advise them to look for when it comes to creating that brand name to ensure that it's trademarkable and protectable?
I would say that the one thing is coming up with a name that's very unique and distinctive. And so I would say that all names are not created equal. There are some names that are much stronger and eligible for trademark infringement, particularly, I would say, so if I had to describe it, so think of like the Google and the Adidas and those types of brand names that are completely invented and made up. Like those
Hmm.
are the names with the strongest trademark protection because they're inherently distinctive. They're so unique that the likelihood of someone else using it is very low. And so those are the best names. And then the second, I guess, level of names would be words that exist in the English dictionary that are being applied to something completely unrelated. So think of like Apple for computers or Camel for cigarettes. Again, it's a word in the English dictionary, but it's completely unrelated to the products and services that you're offering. Those are also really good trademarks. Now, as you go down lower to I guess down the totem pole, as it becomes more descriptive, it becomes a less eligible trademarkable name. There are caveats to that where if you do have a descriptive name, you have to use it for 5 years exclusively and distinctively before you can get trademarked. So there's a lot more nuances the more descriptive your name is. So
Hmm.
it's best to come out with a name that's stronger and more distinctive and unique and unlikely to be already out there. And so that's kind of the first step is coming up with those kind of names. And the second step would be to do your due diligence, do your trademark search, look on the USPTO site, do your Google searches, look in business records, just see what's out there. Is there anyone in my space, in my industry already who has this name or anything similar? Do they already have a federal trademark registration? So I would say like the bulk of the work in the trademark or the most important, I would say the bulk, but the most important is that initial due diligence and research at the beginning, because that can make and break your business long term. And then once you kind of have that clarity, then let's go and file that trademark, and so
Hmm.
it lowers the chances of risks or even allows you to identify certain risks that may arise, and then you can come up with a strategy to how to go about it if it does. So yeah.
Mm. That's good. So, I what always occurs to me when I hear about this and when I'm thinking through trademarking is that, especially when it comes to selecting a name for your company, I think a lot of people, and this is why I want to ask you about it. A lot of people haven't put the thought and effort into some of the areas of their brand, like the overall brand. They're like, oh, this name is really awesome. I want this name. And then, later on down the road when they really start getting into like thinking about who they're really serving and how they're serving them and, what are the transformations they want their clients to have, then suddenly the name doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Right. So I would love to hear about your opinion about how far down the road, like where, like who, how far down the road of really getting into their brand, their underlying brand, should someone go before they start really doing the trademarking process around a business name?
I think it's helpful if as a small business owner have the resources to invest in like a brand strategist or a marketing company that can kind of work through different naming convention. And sometimes, it could be hit or miss because there's some who's been like, I work with a marketing company and here are the names. And I'm like, those are the most descriptive names I've ever seen. But I will
Mhm.
say, I think it's worth the investment to kind of get clear on your vision. This in order to start the trademark process, like I challenge my clients to be clear on their vision. So kind of like at least in the next 3 to 5 years, where do you see your business? Now, of course, it can change. I mean, that's kind of how entrepreneurship is. We're always
Mhm.
constantly pivoting, but at least if we kind of know the direction that you're going, we can look and see if the name is a good choice. We can identify the products and services to include in your application to allow for a little bit of wiggle room in terms of how you might be pivoting your business. So there are different strategies. So I will say, the most important part of this process is strategy. Like a lot of people think it's just about coming up with a name and let me follow the application, let's go. Like just like bam, bam. But strategy is so important before naming your business, before starting the process, because then that will really dictate where it goes, how successful you are long term, and all of those things. So I will say if you have the means to invest in that strategy before really getting into the weeds of everything.
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree, and obviously, and I think that's actually partly what gets people in trouble with a lot of things, not just trademarking, but not really being very clear. And then they
Yeah.
come to someone like you, and they go through this whole and they invest a lot of money with you to help make sure that they're successful. But then later on, what they've got doesn't really make sense. So I appreciate that perspective. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some stories. So can you share a story of a client that you've had who had a very unique or maybe entertaining brand that made the process like really memorable for you? Is there anybody that comes to mind?
There isn't, to be honest. I've worked with, I mean, over the course of like thousands of different names. I will say the most satisfying thing about what I do is when businesses, individuals come to me with, hey, this is only an idea right now. Like this is an idea. They come to me at the very beginning before it even hits the market. And so like that whole process of seeing it come from an idea to like actually in the marketplace and like seeing it thrive in the marketplace and to know like I was at the very beginning before anyone knew about this. And so I would say I work that's basically the day-to-day of what I do. So there isn't a particular brand that stands out. I've worked with a really amazing brands over the course of my career, but I will say that is the part that I love is seeing it come from an idea and then it manifest. It's like the manifestation of this is what I envision and then actually see it come a reality. Like that's the best feeling.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. That's cool. Well, how about if you can describe for us how you take care of your clients and ensure the success for your clients as you guide them through the process? Because I am certain there's something that you do specifically, that's part of your brand that really ensures success with when working with you. Like, what's that sort of step-by-step process?
I would say so. The initial process is the strategy. We start with a strategy call. We get it. We talk about, what are you doing now? Where do you see your business going in the next 3 to 5 years? So really kind of getting clear on that. So that's first thing. We start with the strategy. What are we going to do? What's the best way forward? Which trademarks do we invest in right now? Which ones do we put in the back burner until later? Things like that. What do we apply for? So that's the first step. And then once we're hired, we do a full comprehensive trademark search, meaning we look at to see what is the risk of you moving forward with this name, not only with use, but then also registering with the USPTO. So we do a thorough search, provide a written opinion on our thoughts on whether or not the risk is high or low, or what your chances of success look like. And so based on that information, then the client is able to make an informed decision about, okay, I don't want to take this risk. I don't want to take this risk is too high. Let me come up with a new name. And they can make that decision at the early part versus, oh, the risk is low, let's move forward. So once we move forward, we'll prepare and file the application. We come up with the best and broadest description to ensure that the products and services reflect what they're currently doing or planning to do in the marketplace.